Hi, this is David Sprinkle, the Research Director for Package Facts, and I have here with me David Lummis, our longtime Senior Analyst and Consultant for the U.S. pet market. This discussion is in the context of having just published a new report on the pet food market in the U.S., focusing on dogs and cats. And it's the 15th edition of this report for us. So we have been covering, and certainly David Lummis has been covering, the pet market for a very long time. So we have today the benefit of his perspective on what trends are continuing and what trends remain in place. This is the 15th edition of our pet food report. So we certainly have some perspective on this market in terms of what is continuing and what is new in the wake of COVID-19 impact. So David, just to start off, what is the very top line growth rate for pet food in the US?
Well, for the past several years, it's been growing somewhere in the range of 4 to 6% annually. And that's pretty much what we had expected it to do during 2020 pre-pandemic.
That is a robust growth rate for a large and mature CPG market. So what continues to drive growth in pet food?
Yeah, absolutely. It's about a $29 billion market as of 2019. So when you hear 4 or 5 or 6% growth on a market that size, it really is pretty impressive performance, especially since the pet population really hasn't been growing that quickly over the past several years. So much of the growth has been coming from trending consumers up to higher priced products, which we call premiumization. And of course, the robust pets as family trend, which has pet owners willing to spend much more than was previously thought they would for higher quality products, particularly products that are health related.
With premium and super premium pet foods, there has long been a sort of tug of war in the pet market, really as in the human food market, between more natural, organic, holistic positioned food formulations and also more sort of scientific, functional, in the case of pet food, veterinary formulations. How is that playing out now in terms of premiumized pet food formulations?
Well, it's really interesting. Both trends are still going strong, and there still is some sort of push and pull going on between the two trends. Natural, of course, has been around for a long time in the pet food market, and as in human foods, natural is a little bit of a fuzzy definition. And because natural pet food is so ubiquitous now, meaning it's long since crossed over from the pet specialty channel into mass channels, and it's available at almost every price point now, it's lost some of its pizzazz. So marketers of natural products are really no longer able to simply slap the word natural on the product and rely on that to generate substantial, excitement or newness. So they're relying instead more on specific ingredients, whether it's superfood ingredients, whether it's a much stronger emphasis on fresh ingredients. At the same time, because natural has become fairly mature, I would say, in the pet food market, there does seem to be a swing back now to science-backed foods, which of course was always the sort of the heritage of Hill's science diet. And it's kind of ironic because Hill's was a little bit slow to join the natural party. They did introduce some natural lines several years back, which they've recently phased out because what they're finding now is that their science-based diets seem to be generating more interest. And a lot of those have condition-specific appeals, whether it's gastrointestinal or probiotic ingredients. And particularly now in the age of coronavirus, where there's so much interest in health and on staying healthy, it does seem like the time is really right for a resurgence of these science-based type products.
How much do you think the controversy over grain-free formulations and their possible association with DCM has with that pendulum swing back in the direction, at least partially back in the direction of science and veterinary diets?
Well, I think that has been a contributor. I mean, that was obviously a huge development over the past year. Interestingly, I think the pandemic has sort of changed the subject to a large degree, and also the fact that there hasn't been any more evidence of any link between DCM and grain-free diets over the past several months. And there have also been additional studies really indicating that there are so many other factors and so many other unknowns that it's not very logical to, at this stage of the game, draw that link. It seems to me that grain-free diets have, somewhat surprisingly to me, weathered that crisis better than expected. That said, that whole DCM debacle has definitely put a spotlight back on product safety. And of course, any product that can claim to have been tested and to be backed by science is going to probably fare better in the minds of pet owners.
Speaking of crisis, in the wake of COVID-19, there definitely has been a surge in pet adoption. And interestingly, in contrast to the wake of the Great Recession, this surge has played out across pet types, very much including cats, and very much including other types of pets, because there is a multiple pet trend behind this, in that a lot of pet-owning households really added to their menageries. So with that context, where there's been a surge in cat adoption too, something that we have not seen in many, many years. What are the opportunities now for feline pet food as opposed to canine?
That's interesting also, that the fact that we have seen that, according to our survey, that surge in cat adoption, which, like you said, the cat population growth had been pretty flat, if not declining, for slightly declining for some time. I think even before COVID, marketers had begun to get the message that cats were an underserved area of the market. I had begun to notice a lot more cat-specific email marketing promotions in my inbox from the major pet specialty big boxes, from Chewy, from all the usual suspects, where the email was all about cats. Now, with the surge in the cat population, that trend would certainly appear to have room to grow.
Speaking of room to grow, e-commerce was a big part, if not the dominant part, of discussion about pet product growth, even before COVID-19, even more so now. How does the increase, at least temporary, if not ongoing, in e-commerce buying of pet food, how does that affect market prospects going forward?
Well, that's another sort of a push and pull situation, but so far the effect has been positive, and that was even pre-COVID. The data that we saw showed that even though e-commerce was drawing sales away from brick and mortar, it was more than compensating with a net result of gains, overall gains in the pet food market. So at this stage of the game, and particularly now with COVID, we also have a survey since then that showed something like 70% of dog and cat owners are shopping in brick and mortar less, and 65% are ordering now. So even if that's a short-term phenomenon that was spurred just by COVID, and as things get back to normal, that's going to level off some, we definitely have seen pet owners migrate, along with consumers in general, migrate much more quickly online than would have been the case absent the pandemic. And we do expect those consumers to a fair share of those consumers to stick online. So I think for the foreseeable future, it's going to be a net gain for the pet food market, just because of the convenience of having the heavy packages home delivered, and of the tendency of online pet shoppers to stock up, as they have also been doing during the pandemic, and to sign up for the auto replenishment, the subscription programs, which basically make sure that the products remain in stock. And speaking personally, I tend to probably buy a little bit more than I otherwise would.
We also talk about the endless shelf of the internet. So as people go increasingly online, they really are faced with all kinds of different pet food offerings, many specialized products, specialized to your own pet, to different formulations, whether they're more scientific, more natural. So with the increase of e-commerce, with this now sort of leading share of overall retail sales, what do you see as the type of pet food formulations that have the most prospects for growth going forward, given that at least a very significant share of consumers can pretty much pick and choose whatever they want with that variety readily available on the internet?
I think that the pandemic is, in fact, I know just based mainly on anecdotal reports that the pandemic has given a boost to some of the newer fangled fresh food diets that are focused online, were already focused online. So I think some of those smaller companies, whether it's Farmer's Dog or Ollie or Nom Nom Now or just Food for Dogs, are going to benefit in the long term from this trend. Like I said, they were already online, and then suddenly they were already doing what it became suddenly very necessary for all pet food marketers to be able to do during the pandemic. And I think that's going to make them also very attractive as acquisitions targets, since these companies, most of these companies are small startups. And then of course you've got Freshpet, which is more of a brick and mortar type refrigerated product, but there's no reason why a product like that can't be home delivered. So I think that's definitely going to give a big bump to the fresh trend that was already going pre-pandemic.
Yes, and it might be that to some degree the conversation will shift from sort of natural, holistic versus science, veterinary, functional to in fact fresh or any kind of pet food formulation that preserves natural nutrition versus, for example, kibble. So the conversation may be changing over time to the advantage of fresh.
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay, thank you very much, David, just for these thoughts on the pet food market and where the growth is going to be. We'll continue tracking this market and reporting to you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.